Hi, welcome back to Principles of Management. Today, we are going to talk about the ethical and social environment.
Responding to the ethical and social environment. Today I'm going to discuss the managerial ethics, 3 areas of special ethical concern for managers, and how organizations manage ethical behavior. I'm going to identify and summarize key emerging ethical issues in organizations today. I'm going to discuss the concept of social responsibility, specify to whom or what an organization might be considered responsible, and describe 4 types of organizational approaches to social responsibility. I am going to explain the relationship between the government and organizations regarding social responsibility. And finally, I am going to describe some of the activities that organizations may engage in to manage social responsibility. Ethics is an individual's personal beliefs about whether a behavior, action, or decision is right or wrong. Ethical behavior is behavior that conforms to generally accepted social norms. Unethical behavior is behavior that does not conform to generally accepted social norms. A combination of factors contribute to form an individual's ethics. The factors include values and morals, peers, events, and family. Managerial ethics are standards of behavior that guide individual managers in their work. This includes how an organization treats its employees, how employees treat the organization, how employees and the organizations treat other economic agents.
A manager who discriminates against hiring women, that is unethical. And it's also illegal. So let me ask you this. If you were a manager and you decided to hire your cousin instead of another qualified individual, would that be unethical? How about paying an employee less than what they deserve? Is that unethical? The way employees treat their organization also raises ethical issues. What if an employee gave the competition secrets that your organization has, such as ingredient secrets, secret ways to make their products? Is that unethical? How about calling in sick? If employees call in sick and they're not really sick, is that unethical?
Figure 4.1 displays the relationship between employees and the organization. Managers need to approach each set of relationships from an ethical and moral perspective. Unethical behavior most often occurs in a conducive organizational context. Peers, top managers, and cultural contribute to the ethical context. Managers may find themselves under pressure and consider unethical actions.
As a manager, you should lead by example. If you do unethical things as a manager, then your employees will see that and they will do unethical things. Some pressure might make you consider to do unethical things. The environment contributes to this pressure, such as the competitors. Some of the stakeholders might put pressure on you. So make sure you think twice before you consider doing unethical things.
Emphasizing ethical behavior takes many forms, but starts with top management. Committees and training are options. There are 3 common options: creating ethics codes, applying moral judgment, and maintaining organizational justice.
As a manager, you need to emphasize ethical behavior, and a good opportunity to do this is during orientations for your new employees.
code of ethics is a formal written statement of the values and ethical standards that guide a firm's actions. Firms must adhere to such codes if they are to be of value.
Companies such as General Mills and Johnson & Johnson, they have a code of ethics. They have guidelines to show employees how they should treat suppliers, how they should treat customers, and how they should treat competitors.
To apply moral judgment, you must gather the relevant factual information. You must also determine the most appropriate moral values. And also, you must make an ethical judgment based on the rightness or wrongness of the proposed activity or policy. Other principles to consider are ethical norms, including utility. Does the act optimize outcomes? Rights. Does the act respect the rights of all involved? Justice. Is it consistent and fair? Caring. Is the act consistent with people's responsibilities to each other? Figure 4.2 displays a guide for ethical decision-making. The resulting analysis allows a manager to make a clear assessment of whether a decision or policy is ethical. Organizational justice is the perceptions of people in an organization regarding fairness. The 4 types of organizational justice are distributive, procedural, interpersonal, and informational. Distributive justice is people's perceptions of the fairness with distribution of rewards. Procedural justice is individuals' perceptions of the fairness used to determine outcomes. Interpersonal justice is the fairness people see in how they are treated by others. Informational justice is the perceived fairness of information used for decisions.
An example of distributive justice is fair pay for the same level employees. An example of procedural justice is that if evaluations are done by somebody that knows the job, then it is ethical. If an evaluation is done by someone that has no idea of what the job is, then it is seen as unethical. An example of interpersonal justice is that if the boss treats employees well and with respect and with dignity, then it is seen as ethical. But if the boss treats employees badly, then it is seen as unethical. An example of informational justice is that decisions must be made with complete and accurate data and information, and that would be ethical. If decisions are made with no data or not accurate information, then that is unethical.
Some emerging ethical issues include ethical leadership. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002 requires CEOs and CFOs to vouch for the truthfulness of their firm's financial disclosures. Corporate governance. Boards of directors must be independent. Information technology. Online privacy is an important ethical concern. Social responsibility is the set of obligations an organization has to protect and enhance the societal context in which it functions. Organizations may exercise social responsibility toward their stakeholders, the natural environment, and the general social welfare. An organizational stakeholder is a person or organization who is directly affected by the practices of an organization and has a stake in its performance. Organizational stakeholders is another way to describe the task environment. Figure 4.3 shows examples of organizational stakeholders. Most companies focus on 3 main groups: customers, employees, and investors. Other stakeholders include the local community, suppliers, interest groups, trade associations, courts, colleges and universities, foreign government, state, federal government, local government, and creditors. Regarding the natural environment, laws now regulate how business treat the natural environment. Much remains to be done. In general social welfare, organizations contribute to charities, philanthropic organizations, and non-for-profit foundations, among other ways. Arguments for social responsibility include business creates problems and should solve them. Corporations are citizens. Businesses have the resources to help. Businesses can profit from social responsibility. Arguments against social responsibility include businesses should simply focus on making a profit. Involvement gives businesses too much power. There is potential for conflict of interest. Organizations lack the expertise. Figure 4.4 displays arguments for and against social responsibility. Managers should assess their own values, beliefs, and priorities when deciding which stance and approach to take regarding social responsibility. Figure 4.5 displays approaches to social responsibility. The 4 stances an organization can take falls along a continuum. The obstructionist stance is that a firm does as little as possible. The defensive stance is a firm does only what is legally required, nothing more. The accommodative stance is a firm meets legal requirements and goes beyond sometimes. The proactive stance is a firm views itself as a citizen and seeks opportunities to contribute.
An example of a defensive stance is when an organization doesn't really care to be socially responsible. They don't really care to have outreach programs or anything like that. What they do is they just do enough to be legally required to do what they got to do. An example of proactive stance is a firm goes above and beyond, and they really find ways to contribute to society. They can start outreach programs, they can start scholarships, things like that.
Figure 4.6 displays how business and the government influence each other. The government influences organizations through regulation, the establishment of laws and rules that dictate what organizations can and cannot do. They also influence organizations through indirect regulation. For example, providing tax incentives for companies who opened new training centers. Organizations influence government through personal contacts, also through lobbying, which is when an organization uses persons or groups to formally represent an organization before political bodies. An organization also influences government by a political action committee. It is created to solicit and distribute money to political candidates. And finally, an organization influences government by favors and other influence tactics. To manage social responsibility, there is legal compliance, the extent to which the organization complies with local, state, federal, and international laws. There is ethical compliance, the extent to which the firm and its members follow basic ethical standards of behavior. And there is philanthropic giving, the awarding of funds or other gifts to charities or other social programs. Some informal organizational actions that manage social responsibility are organizational leadership and culture. This can define the social responsibility stance adopted by an organization. There's also whistleblowing. This occurs when an employee discloses illegal or unethical conduct by others within an organization. Regarding evaluating social responsibility, Many organizations require employees to read guidelines or codes of ethics and sign an agreement of compliance. Another way is evaluate response time for instances of questionable legal or ethical conduct. A corporate social audit is a formal and thorough analysis of the effectiveness of a firm's social performance. Today, I looked at individual ethics, their organizational context, and noted several emerging ethical issues. Next, I talked about the subject of social responsibility, the relationships between businesses and government regarding social responsibility. I concluded with the activities undertaken by organizations to be more socially responsible.
If you have any questions or concerns, please contact me.